What's good? Have you noticed that everyone's trying to sell a worldview now, almost like it's a vape flavor? You've got blue pill, black pill, white pill, red pill, MGTOW, hustle culture, monk mode, left wing, right wing, Burger King, and chicken wing. Everybody's got a flavor, everybody's got something to sell. And the funny part about most of these is that they're not even really healed, they're just branding. They're not even trying to become stronger in most cases, they're just people trying to be right. So let me offer you something that doesn't come in a political wrapper. Something that actually makes you dangerous, but in the best way possible. Virtumaxing. Not being nice, not having good online presence, and not having the right opinion. Virtumaxing is simple. It means building yourself into someone who is solid. Someone you can depend on. Someone other people can depend on. It means building yourself into someone who can carry the weight without collapsing. Because here's the truth. Most people don't need a new identity, they don't need new ideas, they just need a spine. And that spine should be made of virtues. The problem with the pill culture is that a lot of times, yeah, it helps people become noticers and makes them more aware and they start paying attention more, but it doesn't actually do anything in the long term. For a lot of people, it just makes them really cynical. And then people turn to their pill culture and use it like a permission slip. The red pill becomes, I'm bitter, but I call it truth, so it's okay. Blue pill becomes, I'm naive, but I just call this kindness. Black pill becomes, I've given up, and I call it realism. Hustle culture feels empty inside and then calls it ambition. Monk mode avoids intimacy and then calls it discipline. And a lot of these are just ways to justify being the same person, but throwing a cool label on it. Like you're an outsider, a loner, but you found the term Sigma and now all of a sudden you're something different. It's cool, it's mysterious. So yeah, fuck the noise. Let's talk about something that everyone can do to upgrade their life. It doesn't matter what economy, era, relationship, or life stage you're at, anyone can do this. Anyone can choose to be virtuous. So what Virtumaxing actually isn't vibes. It's not I'm a good person type of energy. It's performance. And not fake performance. It's performance that has proof. It's showing up for yourself. It's showing up for your family, your loved ones, the people you care about, your friends, and yes, even strangers in society. Because virtue isn't what you believe. Virtue is what you do when nobody's going to be clapping for you. It's what you do when it's going to cost you. It's what you do when you're stressed, tired, irritated, misunderstood. It's choosing the right thing even in the bad circumstance. So I'm going to ask you something uncomfortable. How much have you actually looked into being a good person? And not a good person based off of what everybody else thinks good should be, but how much have you looked into being steady under pressure? Not buckling, not breaking, having the strength to keep moving forward. How deeply have you thought about what it means to be virtuous? And how much do you actually try to become like that? Because a lot of people will talk about virtue. They'll treat it like a decoration, like it's some kind of morality bumper sticker. But in actuality, virtue is supposed to be a load-bearing structure that exists in your life. And that's what virtue is supposed to do, because the proof of it is in the outcomes. When you start virtue maxing, your self-respect goes up, because you can rely on yourself, because you show up for yourself. And that only happens if your actions match your values. That means you're doing the thing that you say you're about. Your relationships improve because people actually understand that you're real. This builds integrity. Your decision making gets easier because you don't have to constantly negotiate with yourself. You actually do the thing. And your mental health, that becomes stable because of the fact that you're not living in constant contradictions with yourself. If you think about it, a lot of the anxiety you feel isn't because life is hard. It's most likely because of the fact that your thoughts and actions aren't in alignment with one another. There's a disconnect there. It's like you're carrying two different versions of you in your mind. There's the person who you think you are or say you are, and the person you actually are. Those two versions are constantly fighting within you, and that's what's creating the anxiety. Virtue maxing ends that war. So let's dive a little deeper, because virtue maxing isn't just don't be a jerk. It's actually understanding what your values are, what your virtues are, what you think is good and what makes something good. So you can ask yourself, what is one thing that you refuse to betray? What is one characteristic that you refuse to go against? And this is what you think virtue is. What is a value that you find so sacred that betraying it would be like betraying your own self? What is the thing that if everything was offered to you, if the world tempted you, if you were mocked for it and asked to give it up, you would still say no? Because when you find that virtue, you find your center. You find the meaningful thing that makes you who you are. Because that thing will become more important than the trends, the fear, the algorithm, the childhood traumas, or any pill that anyone's trying to sell you. That will be your center. And when you find that, you become governed internally by that core, by that virtue, rather than governed externally by what everyone is trying to influence you with. And that's rare. The cool thing is that Virtumaxing is kind of anti-algorithm. It doesn't react. And the algorithm wants you reactive. It wants you mad. It wants you tribalized. It wants you to have a shifty identity so that you can be easy to influence. And Virtumaxing makes you unmarketable to the algorithm. You don't sway, you don't bend, you don't break under the pressure of the thing that's going on. You can't be easily triggered. You can't open up your phone and be sold on what you should hate today. You no longer need a villain because you have a standard. If you're wondering why any of this matters, it's pretty simple. And I'm pretty sure you're already aware of it, but I'm going to point it out anyways. The world is starving for trustworthy people and people who have integrity. The world is starving for authenticity. Everyone's got opinions. Very few people have integrity. Everyone has a platform, but where's the character? It seems like everybody's playing them, but no one actually is showing character. Virtumaxing is how you become the kind of person who doesn't just talk about good, but you produce it. You become the good that you want to see in the world. And I'm sure we all want to see good in the world. And I'll be real with you, it's not my job to tell you what is moral to you. It's your job to figure it out as a human being. That's kind of all of our jobs. We're all here trying to figure things out. But if you want something to help you along with that journey, then here it is. Figure out what your top 3 virtues are. What kind of things that you find admirable in other people, qualities, characteristics that you would like to have for yourself, things that you would be unwilling to betray if asked to. Some examples are things like honesty, courage, discipline, patience, compassion, humility, loyalty. The next thing you're going to want to do is figure out what that means, not just as an idea, but also as an action. What does it look like when it's in motion, when it's being applied and not just theorized? Not just honesty is good, but what does it look like when it's in use? Honesty is I don't lie to myself. And if I don't lie to myself, I also refuse to lie to other people. I'm not going to manipulate other people. I'm not going to hide behind convenient stories. I'm going to look at the truth as something that helps and informs me and allows me to grow rather than something that's against me. Third thing you can do is just pick a daily proof. Find one way each day that you can implement these things into your life. Make it part of your daily activity. When you're confronted with a scenario where you can conveniently lie, do the inconvenient thing of telling the truth, if honesty is your virtue. And the last thing is just pay attention to it. Track your reps the way a weightlifter tracks their personal records, because at the end of the day, Virtumaxing is like a spiritual weightlifting. You're not just hoping to become strong, you're actually lifting the weight, you're doing the thing. And that's how you become strong over time. Think of it like training. And if you want a good solid basis for a well-rounded set of virtues, then look into the cardinal virtues. Because if you go back through time and look at kind of how the Western world was created and established, it's all kind of built around the cardinal virtues or the Platonic virtues, that come from Plato. What this is it's kind of like a foundation for what in philosophy is considered to be a virtuous person that participates in a virtuous society. If a society has these virtues, then the society itself is considered to be a virtuous society. Because these particular virtues have been around for well over 1,000 years, they've kind of withstood the test of time. That makes them valid. It makes them applicable to your life. Not just relics of history that can be discarded, but the fun part about these is that they were actually the foundation for a lot of rules that got set in place throughout Western society as it was developing, even into America. The basis for kind of what our Constitution is, you can trace its lineage all the way back to the cardinal virtues, and even beyond that if you'd like to go that far, but this video is about virtues, not necessarily about religion or history or anything else. However, cardinal virtues give you a good, solid foundation for parameters to live your life by. If you have an action that you're not sure if it's a good or bad thing, and you kind of cross-reference it with, does this violate one of the cardinal virtues, you can kind of get a better understanding of whether or not this is a good thing or bad thing to do. It's a great place to start, and you can always explore the idea further if you want to and get more nuanced with it, because there's so many different philosophies about what is good and bad and how to decide what is good and bad and all these other things. But we're not going to go that deep today. But for me, that's where I started. I didn't have any real virtues or values growing up. Like, sure, people told me, like, you should do this because of that. But that doesn't really inform you as to how a thing is good or how it is bad and what the outcomes of it produce. It's not until I actually sat down and thought about, like, well, what is a good life? How do I create a good life for myself? What do I need to do? And also, what do I need to avoid and why? That I started to begin to understand what a good life entails, and the fact that a good life was even possible, because for some people like me, you don't really know that that's possible until you really start to sit down and think about it and flesh everything out. And the most interesting thing is that there's this thing that happens with us consciously, that when we become aware of something, we can't become unaware of it. So when we figure out what is good and we choose to do good, we become internally validating at the fact that we're doing good. And it gives us this internal kind of standard where we know what's good, so we have to do that thing to actually satiate that I'm a good person idea that we have of ourselves. And of course, you're going to fail. I've failed. I'm not a perfect person. None of us are. Welcome to being human. But the point is that virtue is something that you can always aim towards. Something you could always try and improve towards. I've failed many people many times. For me personally, the core that I hold as my virtue is honesty. And that means even when I fail and I know I failed, I have to be honest and upfront with it. And sometimes that comes with being humbled. Sometimes that comes with a great pain of looking in the mirror at my self-reflection, at my actions, and recognizing that I have done something horrible, terrible, really bad, and that I am the only person who is responsible for accepting that that was done, and also I'm the only person who can prevent that from happening in the future, because these are all my actions. That requires a little bit of self-forgiveness and self-grace. Don't be too hard on yourself. You're not going to be perfected overnight, but you can always strive towards improving little by little. So yeah, I'm not selling you a pill. I'm selling you something that doesn't expire. At least it hasn't expired for over 1,000 years. Virtumaxing. Build a spine, build a standard, and build a self that you can live with. Because at the end of your life, people aren't going to ask you what pill you took and whether you were on the right side or wrong side of history. People are going to wonder, were you honest? Were you humble? Were you kind? Were you faithful? Were you disciplined? And did you even show up? More importantly, are you going to be able to answer that question without flinching? Until next time, always stay up to no good.